Hey everybody, in this lecture we're going to be talking about blown out backgrounds. So what a blown out background means is when the background light, usually coming from the sky, a window, or such, it is so bright that it just becomes this white thing that is overpowering the subject, is spilling over into the picture, and it just looks very bad. I'm going to give you some tips to help you with blown out backgrounds, but the number one tip is going to be just to avoid backgrounds like that. So I'm going to show you just like two examples, and you're going to get the idea very quickly, and then hopefully it's going to help you guys take better pictures. So blown out backgrounds do not look good. Now there is probably like 1% of situations where you have the subject and you're shooting them in a blown out background and the background's all white and then they look interesting. But in 99% of the time, a blown out background looks bad in photography. It looks very amateur. You don't know what you're doing. And your camera, iPhone has gotten better with that. Like the dynamic range with HDR pictures are really good so that the background doesn't look so blown out. It'll actually lower the brightness with the highlights so you can see the background and it's not that bad. But in the slight chance that it is really bad, there's certain things you can do to avoid that. The first thing, if we look at this picture right here, is if the brightness of the room was brighter, then the subject will be brighter, which will make the camera lower the brightness and which will make the background not be blown out or as blown out. Okay, so there's a relation between blown out and not blown out. So right now, let me show you in the background here. The light here in the background is kind of blown out, but not so much that you can't see the wall. The wall looks blue, right? And that is because there's another light in front of me that is very bright hitting me, so that my camera is darkening the image, which will allow you to still see the wall in the background blue and stuff. Now, this is not the case when you're shooting by a window or a background that's very bright. Chances are your subject doesn't have enough light because there's only one light source. But if you're inside a room like this and you can turn on all the lights and make sure that the subject is very lit, then the background won't look as bad. Now, if I turn off the light and the only light coming into the room is the background light, and that's in the background, it's going to look like this. So I'm going to turn off this light. And it's made everything brighter in the background, and now the whole background is all blown out. You can't even see the color of the wall, which is blue, and some of the light is spilling over to my face. Okay, so this is what most people do. They take a picture like this, and what ends up happening is that we have light spilling in the face right there, and then you have a background that's all white and it's just losing all the information in the picture, and then I don't look good. So the best thing to do is, if you can, turn on all the lights, make sure that there's as much light, or sometimes use a flash, so that the subject has enough light and then the background becomes darker. Now you can see the blue walls and everything, and some of the lights not spilling over like before. Okay, so the next tip that I can give you is to shoot this at another angle. Okay, so the window's right there, and is in the background. My top recommendation is, if you can, make sure that the window is hitting the subjects. Window light is nice. It's soft light, okay? Hard light would be direct sun. If it was direct sun, I wouldn't say have them point at the subject. If it's soft light like the window, then I would say have it hit the subjects. The subject's nice exposed. The background doesn't have the window, so it's going to make the subject stand out. And we're going to talk more about that in a few other lectures about having the subject stand out. But if let's say it was just these people like this sitting together and the windows behind them, if possible, turn them over so that the window is facing them. And now when you take a picture of the people, so let's say now the window is in front of me and you take a picture of me, now I'm light well. If it was behind me and such, like now the window is behind me, then that's going to become bright and I'm going to become dark. So stuff like that. Now we look at this next example. This is outside. The sky is blown out and my camera, when clicking on the subject to make sure they're bright, is making the whole picture very bright because they're in the shadows, and then the background becomes blown out. Now if I click on the background, right, I click on the background so that the background is exposed well, then this is what happens. The background's exposed well. This is how I want my background to look, but now my subject's all in the dark, right? So what I would do in this situation, if I was taking the picture, is first avoid that background, right? Face them to the wall, which is the same exposure as them, and take a picture of them towards the wall. So the wall's the background, they're the subject, and now everything's exposed evenly. That's the best thing to do. If you must take a picture like this, I wouldn't point at them or I wouldn't point at the background. I will manually raise and lower my exposure so it's somewhere in the middle. And then I will use editing, lower my highlights, raise my shadows, raise my contrast, and then it's going to be a more even picture, right? So somewhere, take something in the middle and adjust it in editing. Avoid a blown out background. And then, angles. So some of the light can be hitting them rather than none of it hitting them because the light's behind them. And then now you have something more even because you still have the sky, but more light to them thanks to the background. So stuff like this, I just want you to look at. If you see a blown out background, see what you can do angle wise, exposure, so you don't have a blown out background in your picture. So that's it when it comes to blown out backgrounds. Now we're going to move on to the next lecture.